All right? Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Okay. Yesterday, we talked about Cobit 5, the key elements of Cobit 5. We said that the basis of Cobit 5 is basically 5 principles and a few enablers. How many enablers? 7 enablers. The principles, what were the principles? Anybody remembers? I know this is not a classroom. I'm used to delivering a lot of training. That's why sometimes I just think I have students or candidates in front of me. The 5 Cobit principles that we discussed yesterday, meeting stakeholder needs, okay? Covering the enterprise end to end. Doesn't just focus on IT. It covers the entire enterprise. It brings IT governance within the overall framework of enterprise governance. Applying a single integrated framework. We have all of these myriad of frameworks that we are using in the organization. We can integrate them all within a single framework, under a single governance framework, which, as you may know, give us a lot of advantages. One framework, one set of KPIs from top to bottom, okay? So applying a single integrated framework, enabling a holistic approach. Yes, processes are important, but basically that's not the only thing that I need to care about. I need to care about the culture of the organization. I need to care about policies, about information. So I need to care about all of these enablers, what we call enablers. Cobit identifies a set of how many enablers? 7 enablers. And what were they? Some of the enablers. Information, that's one of the key enablers. Actually, that's the underlying premise of Cobit, that business needs information. Okay? Information, processes, principles, policies, and frameworks, organizational structures, culture, ethics, and behavior, services, infrastructure, and applications, and people, skills, and competencies. These are the 7 Cobit enablers that we have. So enabling a holistic approach, we have to look at all of these 7 together. Okay? And of course, the last one is the separation of governance from management. That was the 5th principle that we talked about. Separation of governance and management, the nature of activities between governance and management are different. Governance performs what we call EDM, evaluate, direct, monitor. Management is all about plan, build, run, and monitor, PBRM. And in Cobit, in the Cobit process reference model, we have a reflection of this separation between governance and management. We have 37 processes that are distributed along 5 domains, 1 governance domain and 4 management domains. The governance domain is called the EDM domain. Okay? The management domains are align, plan, and organize, which is basically plan. Build, acquire, and implement, BAI. Okay? Deliver, service, and support for run, and monitor, evaluate, and assess. Those are the 4 management domains that we have in Cobit 5. So this is a brief about Cobit 5, which is a very flexible framework, guidance, no more, no less, that you will use to implement a governance framework within your organization. Okay? Now today what we are going to be covering is we're going to talk about these principles and how they apply to cybersecurity. We're going to take briefly, of course, we're going to talk about the enablers and how they apply within a cybersecurity context. And we're going to talk about Cobit implementation. How do you implement Cobit in an organization? These are basically going to be our topics for today. And of course, we can keep this session as open for discussions as possible. Okay, so you can interrupt anytime and ask any questions that you see fit. All right? Can we start, Naveen, with the presentation? Okay. So again, let's look at these are the Cobit principles. Where's this is how they apply. Applying Cobit 5 to cyber security principles. As part of the Cobit library or Cobit products, Izaka developed a specialized tool for Cobit regarding security. It's called Cobit for Information Security. It focuses particularly takes Cobit from a security aspect. As an extension of Cobit for cybersecurity, they also developed specialized guidance based on Cobit for Information Security, targeting cybersecurity. This was developed recently. Okay? Izaka is great at doing research. There's another publication that was published recently, which is about using Cobit 5 to secure mobile devices. Because I was outside, I heard somebody talk about mobile devices and BYOD. So I would strongly encourage you, before you do anything, look at the guidance that is available. There is plenty of guidance there. So this is all based on Cobit for information security, as well as Cobit for cybersecurity, using Cobit tool for cybersecurity. Okay? Now, basically, as we said, those are the 5 Cobit principles. The 5 Cobit principles will apply within a cybersecurity context. If you think about it, meeting stakeholder needs. For cybersecurity, there are different stakeholders. You have to meet the needs of the different stakeholders from a user's perspective, from compliance perspective, from an assurance perspective, all from a security professional's perspectives. So all of these needs, they will have to be assessed, and based on these, you will define measurable targets for achieving these, to meet the needs of the different stakeholders. Covering the enterprise end-to-end. Cybersecurity is not the responsibility of IT professionals only. That was one of our key discussions yesterday. The most powerful devices are not in the hands of IT people, or that are knowledgeable, or technically knowledgeable. But they are actually with the hands of people that have no technical knowledge whatsoever. We're seeing this shift in the power of computing to the users, and they're taking these devices home. They're working from home. So basically, it has to cover the enterprise end-to-end, doesn't just focus on IT. Okay? Now, applying a single integrated framework is an interesting one, and I chose this one to specifically talk about this. Okay? As I mentioned yesterday, Cobit is a high-level framework. It tells you what needs to be done. It doesn't tell you how to do it. Okay? As long as you are achieving these objectives, you're fine. Okay? You're fine. How you achieve them, you can develop your own frameworks, you can develop your own procedures, or you can use further guidance. So Cobit, again, can be used to integrate all of these other specifically security-related initiatives, standards, frameworks, and best practices. Of course, you will still need to map these to your existing processes or to Cobit. Within each and every Cobit process, Cobit will describe a set of activities that need to be performed. Again, it is up to you to choose which ones are relevant for you. How you're going to achieve them, you can use this guidance. Cobit tells you, for instance, all incidents need to be logged. Doesn't tell you how to log them. Incidents need to be prioritized. How? Well, I have no idea. I can either come up with my own scheme, or maybe I can look at ITIL or ISO 20000 or whatever. For security incidents, let's see what ISO 27000 says about these security incidents. So basically, you can use Cobit for the integration of all of these other standards, frameworks, and best practices. Okay? So if my computer was next to me, I would have showed you some actual practical implementations of these and how we are using them. Okay? These are the 7 Cobit enablers, and we will briefly look at the detailed work that Izaka has done regarding these 7 enablers. Okay? Because they were customized for information security as well as for cybersecurity. Okay? So all of these will apply for Cobit. This is an example, I don't know if this is clear, about principles. They have developed extensive principles for cybersecurity. This is just a sample of them. You can find all of these in your Cobit for cybersecurity, using Cobit, or Cybersecurity Nexus, which is a new initiative for cybersecurity, which is supported by certification and so on. So they describe all of these principles, comply with relevant legal and regulatory requirements. Objective, this is ensure that statutory obligations are met, stakeholder expectations are managed. So they will give you this kind of guidance for all of these principles. Again, choose the ones that are relevant for you. No 2 organizations are the same. Some of this may be applicable for you, some of them may be not. Okay? These are examples of other principles. Evaluate current and future information threats. Analyze and assess emerging information security threats. So it tells you that you need to do this. How you need to do it, that's actually where you have to develop these frameworks or use other guidance. So this is just an example of the principles that are tailor-made for cybersecurity. So this is, again, policies. Okay? We talked about the importance of policies yesterday. Basically, policies should provide detailed guidance about putting these principles into action. Okay? Policies, of course, they have to express the goals, the intentions of management, guidance about the do's and don'ts, detailed guidance, how to handle exceptions. Policies have to be managed within a framework. They have to be constantly reviewed. For an information security policy, for instance, if it contains cybersecurity, or if it doesn't, information security policy should be reviewed, recommended at least every 6 months. Okay? And whenever you have major security incidents. Okay? So those are some examples of the policies that are tailor-made, and they are provided by Cobit specifically for cybersecurity. Okay? And you have pages after pages of these elements for these policies, guidance, and they are mapped to Cobit for information security. Okay? So having these will actually save you a lot of time and effort. So you're not starting from scratch. Do not reinvent the wheel. That's the whole message that I'm saying here. You'll have a lot of these. Those are just a sample of the policies. Okay? Processes. If we look at the Cobit process reference model, there are extensive processes that will touch on security, specifically cybersecurity. Yesterday in the discussions, we kept talking about security. We talked about continuity, availability. All of these will be affected by cybersecurity. So again, I don't want to look at them as bits and pieces. I want to manage them all within the same framework. And of course, Cobit will give you detailed guidance about each and every processes. Those are the key processes that will target cybersecurity, the key Cobit processes. Okay? And will give you guidance how they are involved with cybersecurity, and some of the other processes that we'll use to actually monitor the it can be tailor-made for monitoring cybersecurity. Those are some of the Cobit processes that will. When you say a process APO01, that's the name of the process. That means the process is an aligned, plan, and organized domain, and it has number 101. So that's how they number these processes. Okay? So these are the specific processes that can be tailor-made for cybersecurity. And again, there's detailed guidance for these processes. That's available in enabling processes. Okay? This is organization structures. You have to have the right organization structures within your organization to support any cybersecurity initiative. Okay? Cobit, for instance, as good practices for organizational structures, will tell you that you have to define the operating principles for any organization structure, their span of control, their level of authority, delegation of responsibility. All of these have to be defined. Now, escalation, how do you escalate? Okay? So based on these, they can also give you specialized suggestions. For instance, this is for information security manager profile. Okay? They have these specialized roles based on information security. Again, and I keep repeating this, you have to take these, use them if they are suitable for your organization, or customize them according to the needs of your organization. For instance, information security manager mandate, overall responsible for management of information security efforts, okay, operating principles, reports to CISO, span of control, and so on. All of these are detailed to support your cybersecurity initiative or cybersecurity framework. Okay. Culture, ethics, and behavior. That's one of the things that we have to look at. Culture of the organization will have an impact on implementing these standards, frameworks, and best practices. Culture, ethics, and behavior, this enabler, will be affected in case there is a major security incident. This will be affected. If there's a major attack on an organization, the culture of the organization itself will be affected. So basically, with Cobit, also it gives you guidance about desired behavior. How do you enforce this desired behavior related to cybersecurity? How to prevent undesired behavior, whether at an organizational level or at an individual level. And we know most of these initiatives, frameworks, whether we're talking ITIL, whether we're talking Cobit, whether we're talking about ISO 27000, we have to take into consideration the culture of the organization. And many of these initiatives fail because they were not customized for that specific organization. Okay? And this is, again, further detailed guidance that is relevant to cybersecurity. As I said, I'm not going to go in these in detail, just to give you a flavor of these elements. Our other key enabler is, of course, information. As we said yesterday, the underlying premise for the development of Cobit is that business needs information. And this need for information is what drives the business to invest in IT. And of course, information has to meet the needs of the business under certain categories. And this, in Cobit, they developed the information model, the 6 layers of the information model. Okay? Those are the 6 layers of the information model that I talked about yesterday: physical, empirical, syntactic, semantic, and so on, which will help you determine the protection requirements, for instance, for information at different levels. The way you protect where the information is stored is totally different than how it is going to be accessed, or determine the retention requirements, or the security classification, or encryption at different levels. So this model is very useful for information in the context of cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. Now, the sixth enabler: services, infrastructure, and applications. To support your security governance framework, you have also to support it with the right tools. Okay? So tools and technology are covered under this enabler. And those are mentioned in details, what kind of tools will be required in Cobit 5 for information security. They give this kind of detailed guidance for security architecture, awareness, secure development, and so on. All of these tools in Cobit for information security. So now basically what the advantage of having, and let me talk about the seventh enabler first: people, skills, and competencies. We talked about this one extensively yesterday about having the right skills in the organization. People, skills, and competencies. When we talk about awareness or training, it's at different levels. Okay? Different processes will require different roles. They will require different skills. And it really helps you to identify the skills that are required. If you require somebody, for instance, a service desk analyst, what do you expect from a good service desk analyst? You don't just pick somebody from the street and put them at the service desk and you're a service desk analyst. That's an entry-level position. But if you want to have a good service desk, what kind of skills would you require? For instance, communication. That's right. And when we talk about communication, two-way communication. They have to be able to speak at the right level and to listen. What else? Analytical to a certain degree, analytical skills. What else? So I always give the example of a service desk because that's the entry level. And if you don't break these down, how do you expect to get a service desk analyst? You need analytical skills. You need to have good communication skills. What else? That's it? Audit? Do you need audit for a service desk, for instance? Understanding that, in what sense, requirements? Service desk, that's your point of contact with the user. See, now I have a problem with that because I also deliver ITIL training. Problem and incident, that's totally separate. They have to know the tools they are using. They are using complex tools for managing the incidents, to log the incidents, to track the incident, remote access tools to access the user's computers. They need to know the business that they are serving. They need to have knowledge of the process, how to escalate, when to escalate, who to escalate to, all of these. They need to have typing skills. How do you expect them to type the incidents? One letter at a time? Or they need to have good typing skills. If you are not able to break these down, how are you going to build the right capacity? You don't expect this from a top manager, for instance. That's why also we have to look at this as an enabler and manage it as such. And of course, Cobit 5 will define the ones that are specific for cybersecurity. All of these skills that are defined, relevant for cybersecurity. Okay? So I know in such a short time, and this is a sample training structure program. How do we train these people? Because the skills that they acquire today will not serve them 1 or 2 years from now. How do we make sure that we have a constant training program? Or if we are sending a message or creating awareness, how do we keep reinforcing this message? And it gives you this kind of guidance, specifically how to structure these training programs. Again, I like to use the word guidance. Take it, use whatever is relevant to your organization. So in brief, this is how the 7 enablers are customized for cybersecurity. And ISACA has done immense research, and they are constantly doing this. They have a special area under the ISACA website. I don't know who had the chance to visit it yesterday. Specifically, it's called the Cybersecurity Nexus. It's in line with the NIST guidelines, as well as with other standards, frameworks, and best practices. So I would strongly encourage you to visit their site and start that. And they're supporting it by a toolkit. There are even toolkits that will actually help you do this. So don't start from scratch. That's my message. Because it's been done. It's already there. It will save a lot of time, effort, money, frustration. It has been done. Good? Any questions before we go into our, yes?
Is there another standard or another framework where you can assess the efficiency of this against that?
Where you can, there's actually, as part of the Cobit toolkits, there's the assessor guidance, which helps you actually assess the processes based on ISO 15504. They will give you detailed guidance for the 37 processes, how to assess these processes according to ISO 15504. And this is actually supported by certification. So there is assessor training, and what ISACA is looking for is to have certified assessors to assess these processes, because processes are one of the key, what do you call them? Key enablers that we have. Now,
My question is, if you have an enterprise where the number of staff is around, let's say, 200, against another enterprise where the number of staff could be more than 5,000 or
yes,
something like that, you will apply the same standard for both enterprises?
Again, let me mention one thing. Cobit is not a standard. It is simply a frame. It's a framework. It's guidance. No more, no less. So you may look, as in your organization, and actually that's one of the things that we're going to talk about in our next topic, implementation. What is relevant for your organization may not be relevant for another. So as I mentioned yesterday, think about it, it's like going into a department store. It has everything you need, but you're not going to buy everything. You're going to take what you need out of it. That's how you have to think about Cobit. The other thing that I would like to mention is simply guidance. So as such, being a guidance or framework, an organization cannot be Cobit certified. There is no Cobit certification for organizations. However, there's an ISO standard for IT governance, which is the ISO 38500. ISO 38500 is based on 6 principles, and these 6 principles actually map to the Cobit principles and the Cobit enablers. So many organizations will use Cobit to achieve ISO 38500, okay, for IT governance, okay, if that's what you want, okay, is to achieve the certification. Yes?
Do you want me to ask now, or?
You can ask at any time, since the question is fresh in your head.
Right. Actually, the question is on terms of how to get the return on investment of Cobit 5 from the senior management.
Can I answer you later?
Yeah, that's what I said.
That's why
I don't want
can
to
I
ask
answer
this
you
question
later?
because
Okay, I'll answer you later. Yes?
Well, thank you very much. I would like to ask, please, if the organization is implementing already 9001,
Yes.
ISO 9001, which is the quality management system, and the ISMS, which is 27001,
Yes.
will the implementation of Cobit will give extra benefit to the organization?
The short answer is yes. The why is because, I mean, you implemented 9001.
Yeah.
Now we have 9001, and this is the people that are responsible for 9001, they're working on it.
Okay.
We have 27001 right here.
Yeah.
How do we make sure they're all integrated together?
For the people who does not know what is 2701001, it is the ISMS, Information Security Management System.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
And it's other parts also, 27. Okay, so
Yeah.
basically, okay, now you're thinking, in the future, I want to implement I don't know, enterprise architecture. I need enterprise architecture. My organization is evolving, and I think enterprise architecture will help, for instance. Or I need to provide better services, and I want to implement the ITIL processes and achieve ISO 20000 certification. I have project management framework that I'm using for managing projects. How do I put all of these into a single framework? Because it makes sense to have them all in a single framework. Again, if you look at the Cobit PRM, the process reference model, all of these can be integrated within this framework. One framework to manage all of these, which gives you a lot of advantages. What we are telling many organizations, because I do a lot of consulting work, many organizations have actually started implementing ITIL, and usually many of these have started implementing ITIL at an operational level. Okay, starting with incident management, problem management, and so on, at an operational level. So what happens, should they stop their work? Because Cobit 5 came out in 2012, and it makes sense to use it. What you can do, actually, in this particular instance, continue using ITIL at an operational level and start using Cobit from top to bottom. Because it actually makes sense. It gives you a better perspective on your organization. Using ITIL, Cobit, and ISO 27000 together is a very powerful combination, very powerful. I mean, as you have seen, it covers a lot of areas that 27000 doesn't cover. See, if I had a whiteboard here, if you think about it from a process perspective, Cobit tells you need to manage information security. That's one of the processes in manage security. Right. How do I manage security? Okay, let's focus on 27000. Right. Okay. Right. Now, where do the other 6 enablers fit? Because they have to fit somewhere. In this kind of implementation, you'll think about, okay, I want to implement this managed security process. What kind of culture, how does this enabler, culture, ethics, and behavior, affect this or interact with this? What kind of information is required for ISO 27000? What kind of people, skills, and competencies are required to support this particular process? So in this particular case, you're having a process-centric implementation of Cobit, and you can think about all the other 6 enablers. Where do they fit in place? You can use it in a different way. Okay, I'm implementing a new service, a new ERP system, or a new CRM system, or whatever, which is basically managed under services, infrastructure, and applications. That's an ERP system to meet the needs of the business. Yeah. Where do the other 6 enablers fit? How do my processes support this enabler? Does incident management support this enabler? Does change management support this enabler? People, skills, and competencies. What kind of training would I require to support this particular service? So you can be very creative with it. That's why I keep saying it's a real eye-opener, because it gives you a structured approach to think about how all of these will work together.
So you still need to implement the Cobit, even though you are implementing quality management system, security management system, service management system.
There isn't an implementation that I have done where I haven't used elements of Cobit, because it is very helpful. I mean, one of the points, for instance, the mappings, stakeholder needs, how they cascade to enterprise goals, and how they map into IT goals. Who tells you, okay, you want to improve security. You want to improve security. You think, okay, I want to manage security, improve security. But who tells you that's the most important thing from an IT perspective? You can think about it this way. Okay, maybe security now is good enough. Business, they have other needs. They're expanding to another market. Okay? I have a lot of, services keep on failing. Customers are not satisfied. I have a requirement from the central bank if I'm in a banking environment. Basel II, Basel III comes in place. Where do I prioritize? That's why this goals mapping, goals cascade is very important. Yeah, you think, okay, I want to implement enhance incident management or improve incident management, because incident management is important for the business. It increases availability, it helps with customer, with user satisfaction, and so on. But who tells you that's the most important thing? Who tells you that's where the priority of the business is? That's why the focus is always on the business. And that's why this goals cascade is very simplistic but very important. Does it make sense? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I just want to share some information that I know about Cobit 5.
Yes.
And as far as I know, it's it's a governance framework.
Yep.
and it's not a standard,
No.
but rather it's aligned with all other standards. So there is no contradiction between implementing Cobit 5 in an organization and implementing other standards.
True.
Actually, they complement each other.
True.
So Cobit 5 is about governance, and you can start at any time. You don't have to have a standard implemented within your organization. And also you can start implementing Cobit 5 to do governance in general.
Subjects which is presented already, it is already in the, I have already seen it in the quality management system. Processes,
Yep.
all of them, you know. So, I mean, I feel that I'm just repeating myself again.
Reorganizing, you would say.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, reorganizing the organization at all levels.
Yep.
Cobit 5 incorporate everybody in the organization to be aligned together. So the stakeholders will take whatever they need to be able to make their decisions in the right manner, and also at the operation level and the middle management, they're all aligned with each other. So it's really very interesting subject to talk about.
There's one more thing that I also didn't cover. You don't have just a single framework that you're using for governance and management, but you have a single framework that you're using for governance, management, as well as audit. That's one very important aspect of Cobit. So you're in IT, you're putting all of these enablers in place. Cobit, from a different perspective, is giving you the tools to create assurance programs over these enablers. So that's why I'm saying it is a very powerful framework. And I strongly suggest, if you go to the ISACA website, there are a lot of case studies about the usage of Cobit that have been published on the ISACA website across different industries, different countries, and so on. Okay, so, and you can just read, each one of them is a page or two, and each organization use it in a different way. Okay, so I would strongly encourage you to read these. You don't even have to subscribe or log in or whatever. Two of these case studies are actually from the region. One of them is ADNOC Distribution. The other one is the financial department in Dubai government, which is using Cobit to audit all IT departments in Dubai government. Okay, but we have seen immense growth for Cobits over the past year or so. Good? Yes?
What should we start with? Should we start with 27,001, 20,000, Cobit 5, 9,000?
Good
That's
question.
my confusion, actually.
Okay, can I answer your question when you start this? The
Yeah, fine.
implementation. That's a
Excellent.
good, what's the starting point? Where do we start? Because we have all of these consultants coming in place and shoving all of these frameworks down our throat. I mean, at one time, you have the flavor of the month. ITIL was the trendy thing to do. Now Cobit 5 is out, well, let's use Cobit 5. You have this flavor of the month. Back in the 80s, we had business process re-engineering for the old timers that if they can remember these things. So where do we start? What's good for us? Again, the question is, what do you want to achieve out of this? You're not doing ISO 20000 for the sake of ISO 20000. Actually, you shouldn't be doing it for the sake of 20,000. You want to do this because you actually want to improve. That's why you actually that's why you want to do this. Or there are some pain issues that you are facing and you want to resolve these issues. So my advice, don't go for certification just for the sake of certification. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Two of the most important standards that we actually see a huge demand for them in the region, 20,000, 27,000. 20,000 for service management, 27,000 for and family for security. But there are others. Your project management, you will go for 21,500 and so on. So there are so many of these. Which one should we choose? The nice thing about Cobit, if you look at the Cobit process reference model, it gives you a full roadmap, what you should be doing now, and it also shows you guides you what to do in the future. And it gives you the guidance for this. There's an implementation guide for this. Again, where they take you by the hand and show you the steps that you have to go through from one step to another. to implement these standards, frameworks, and best practices. Because this implementation guide, this is not just applicable to Cobit, but applicable to any other standard framework or best practice. And actually, I'll try to cover this very briefly, the implementation guide, because this is part of 3-day training, actually, full training for implementation. So the easy answer for your question is, it depends. The consultant's answer, it depends. That's what they're going to answer you. Okay. Yes?
Just a quick comment on how to choose. In Yasser, for example, we had a national initiative called Improvement of Operational Excellence. Under the Operational Excellence Improvement Initiative, we wanted to improve the national e-government portal, for example, the saudi.gov.sa. So we selected ISO 20000 specifically for the national portal as one out of many products that exist in Yasser. So it was implemented only on the portal because it is the master repository of all government services.
Okay.
So it had to be predictable and repeatable, all the mechanism around it. Then we chose the ISO 27001 to improve the overall security of the national data center. So it needs to be a roadmap driven by a corporate objective, not by what I think is right.
Or actually, the business needs.
Correct.
Remember, that's where this mapping is important. Stakeholder needs, enterprise goals, IT goals, then they are mapped to the processes. So they give you this systematic approach to do this. Okay. Now the implementation, any other questions before I go briefly with the implementation? Okay, well, I'm not going to go through all the steps, just to give you an idea, what's the Cobit approach for implementing Cobit, or this, you can use this for any other standard framework or a best practice, basically. Yes? 15 more minutes. Okay, here it says 9, but I'll try to do it. Okay. So Cobit implementation, this guide is already published. It was published at the same time of Cobit. It's available as a separate publication. There is certification for it, 3-day training, plus as well as examination for it. So there is it's supported by training and so on. Okay. The important thing about Cobit 5, and this is where their innovative approach comes in place. It is, of course, a cyclical approach. Okay? It is an ongoing effort. It doesn't stop. The way that Cobit tackles implementation is on 3 parallel fronts. They're doing it at 3 fronts in parallel. First, you're doing this because you want to improve. And this is your core cycle, doing it as a part of continual improvements. You're doing this because you want to improve. The second interrelated component of the implementation cycle is what we call change enablement. Many of these implementations fail because of cultural elements, resistance to change, right? That's why you have the failure. Most of these failures, ITIL initiatives, Cobit implementations, any of the ISO 27, they fail because of culture and human elements. So the second interrelated elements specifically deals with these issues, cultural issues, resistance to change, and so on, the change enablement. The third one, which is basically the control element of the entire cycle, you want to do this as part of, and how you control it? You control it by using program and project management techniques. So the third interrelated element is program management. So we're working on 3 fronts in parallel. At the core cycle, we have continual improvement. The middle one is change enablement, and the outermost cycle is basically what we call the control cycle, or program management, as well as program management. And let's take a quick look at this. Of course, here it is very important to understand, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it? No 2 organizations are the same. Each organization will have different challenges, different objectives, different resources, different legal environment, different infrastructure, different technology. Each organization will have to determine, actually, why they are doing this. What's the reason behind this? Okay? And this is the Cobit implementation cycle, which, as you can see, is an iterative cycle, starting by understanding what are the drivers, where are we now, where do we want to be, how do we get there, what needs to be done, how do we get there, did we get there, and how do we keep the momentum going. Okay? So it is a full cycle. At the core of this is basically the continual improvement cycle, because you're doing this, as I said, because you want to improve. This cycle is basically about change enablement, culturally based on Qatar's model for change, 8 steps for change. This is the change enablement, and this cycle is all about program management as well as project management. In the implementation guide, sorry about this, they'll give you detailed guidance about the inputs and the outputs for each one of these steps, the activities that have to be performed as part of continual service improvement, as part of continual improvement, as part of change enablement, as part of program management, critical success factors, challenges for each one of these. So basically, they will give you a systematic approach to go through these steps one by one for implementation. And the whole thing, as you can see, is iterative. Because, okay, you have done all of this. Now what happens? The objectives of the organization has changed, technology has changed, new legal environment, new regulations. So how do you keep this ongoing? Cobit recommends that this entire cycle does not exceed 6 months. The entire cycle, okay, for improvement does not exceed 6 months. More than 6 months, you're bound to lose momentum. If you can do it in less than 6 months, you also, you have to think about giving the organization time to absorb these changes. Okay, because whatever changes you implement, they have to become part of everyday life. Okay, so this is the Cobit implementation approach, which is very innovative, actually, because they take all of these elements together. If you have a complex task, you're going to break it down over multiple iterations. It has to be broken down over multiple iterations. Eventually, all of this implementation has to become part of everyday life. Okay? So in short, this is the Cobit implementation. Okay? So of course, you have to understand the context within which you are applying this implementation, the organization itself, the vision, the missions, the goals, the objectives, the legal environment, internal resources, external, all of these, risk appetite, management style, decision making, all of this have to be analyzed for the organization. Okay? And key success factors for this and for any other such implementation, the number one you need, the number one critical success factor, you need top management commitment. Without top management commitment, it is not going to work. And when we talk about top management commitment, we talk about visible management commitment. Visible. Okay? It's not, yes, take $100,000, I don't want to see your face again. That's not management commitment. If I need them to sign policies, they will sign policies. If I need them to send emails, they will send emails. If I need them to attend workshops, they will attend workshops. It's about we need to get management buy-in. Otherwise, simply it will not work. Or you may get very limited benefits. Okay? So top management commitment is very important. Okay? So understanding, of course, everybody's on the same page, understanding business, understanding IT, effective communication. The more complex the change, the more where you need to communicate. Again, when you talk about communication, two-way communication. Okay? You have to be able to talk and to listen. Two monologues do not make a dialogue. Okay? Again, tailoring. Cobit is not something that you will take out of the box. What works in an organization in the USA is not going to work here. What works for a bank here is not going to work for another bank here. You have to take it and customize it, tailor it, adopt and adapt for your own particular needs. So it's not something, and this one, focus on quick wins. In any organization, you have some key areas of strength. Leverage these key areas of strength to get some of these quick wins. You don't want to tell your management, okay, I'm going to implement Cobit, and in 4 years, you're going to get some savings. It's not going to work. Get them identify where you can get these quick wins, which will act as proof of concept and will minimize the resistance along the way. Okay, so those are some of the critical success factors. Another thing one more that I would like to add, do it yourself. Use your people. I have seen many organizations, they will get an army of consultants. Okay, put the army of consultants, they'll start documenting everything, and at the end of the day, you have a nice, thick manual that's somewhere on the shelf gathering dust. You have a lot of people in your organization, they have years of experience, it's your organization, you know it more than anybody else. The role of a consultant is to give you some guidance about, or a bird's eye view about the usage of these standards, frameworks, and best practices. Okay? So again, I don't think I will have time to go through these one by one, okay? But we'll make the presentation available for you. You can download these from the ISACA website. It's not rocket, it's not confidential information. But basically what they tell you at each step what is going on. And for those of you that are familiar with project management, I talked about communication, creating a business case. Somebody asked about business case. You have to create a business case according to whatever project management framework that you are using, okay? And of course, it has to be maintained and so on. So basically, those are the steps that you will go through one by one, okay? One very important thing that I will give you to answer your question, where should I start, okay? Cobit gives you a list of some of the pain points. Those are some pain points that are applicable to many organizations. You look at this list, again, this is not an exhaustive list, and you can identify some of these that are relevant for you in your organization, okay? Failures of IT, complexity of projects start, they never end, failure of audits, for instance. So basically, those are some typical pain points. The nice thing is they map these pain points also to processes. They will give you this kind of mapping. So if